Chapter 2. The Commander. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Winchester looked out of the view screen of the bridge on his Ripper-class frigate, the NRS Red Drake. He didn't much care for the ship. It was clunky in atmosphere and often outgunned by similar ships and other factions. That being said, it did have more armor than most of the newer ships, which were more dependent on speed and shielding, rather than thick hulls. The Ripper-class frigates became obsolete with the introduction of the Crusher-class during the Outer Belt War. But it was his ship, and having been promoted just last week, he was in no position to complain. The frigate was the first he'd ever had command of, and he had a good crew and a full complement of Nightfang aboard that were loyal to him. Lieutenant Commander Thomas J. Winchester was born in the heart of the Nairatsi capital world, Fortune. The Winchester family had been one of the wealthiest and most politically powerful families in the Nairatsi faction. For hundreds of years, the Winchesters were tycoons of various precious metals and other desirable elements. Thomas could have taken over one of the family businesses and attended a prestigious universalage, but instead, he went to the Nairatsi Military Academy. He attended the academy with intentions of becoming a Nightfang infantry officer. When he told his parents this, they panicked. After a year of training, though, he found that the strategy and maneuvers of space combat were where he flourished once he had developed the paradigm of there is no up. He graduated as a dropship pilot a few months before the Outer Belt War ended. He saw one battle at Grendel, and it was very one-sided in his favor. He was a 26-year-old lieutenant when he served as first officer aboard the battlecruiser NRS Lady Hades. Now, he was 29 and in command of a Nairatsi battle group. His frigate was accompanied by 2 smaller Stingray-class corvettes and 4 Piranha-class gunboats. Together, they comprised the third of 3 battle groups orbiting RV-100342-324, Scorpion. 3 battle groups together were the minimum requirement for an invasion fleet according to Nairatsi naval doctrine. It was for this reason that a battlecruiser or command carrier should arrive to take command of the invasion fleet at any minute. "Where is that cruiser?" Thomas said under his breath, growing impatient after waiting for 2 hours. He stared at the gray planet through the live feed on his command console. With the invention of the Shimada warp reactor nearly 800 years ago, with research derived from studying captured Legnar vessels, space travel had improved greatly. The Shimada warp reactor essentially made it possible for ships to travel instantly through the emptiness of space, utilizing cold fission and dark matter. As important as the reactor itself is, the Urdaneta navigation software is of even greater importance. Before the creation of the Urdaneta software, the Shimada's reactor's first tests nearly always slammed ships into other objects with gravitational pulls, usually stars, at unfathomable speeds. The time a ship spends in a warp jump is actually the time it takes the navicomputer to safely move the ship through emptiness around other gravity-inducing objects. If point A and B truly had nothing between them, then the ship would travel in the short amount of time it takes to accelerate and decelerate, which is nearly instantaneous. Knowing this, a 2-hour delay is not due to navigational complications, but more likely political complications in this day and age. Thomas's train of thought led him to wonder how slow the exodus must have been without Shimada warp reactors. Using only ancient near-light thrusters must have been dreadful. "Sir, battle groups 1 and 2 are hailing you," the communications officer said, pulling Thomas back from his musings. "Thank you, Petty Officer Williams. Please put them on screen." Lieutenant Commander Reichert from Battle Group 1 appeared on the left side of the screen, while Lieutenant Commander Olds appeared on the right side.
"Gentlemen, are all invasion sequences initiated?"
Reichert asked.
"My men are prepped and ready,"
Olds answered. "My landing craft are fully loaded and awaiting fleet orders," Thomas said.
"Very good. I've received word from command that Megacruiser NRS Osiris is on the way. We will be designated Second Fleet,"
Reichert explained. Second Fleet. That means Admiral Tavington will be in command of the invasion. Tavington was known for ruthless tactics, and if he couldn't capture a planet, then nobody else would, Thomas thought.
"Understood,"
Olds said. "Understood. Commander Reichert, my scan team picked up a Mason's Guild rocket transport leaving atmosphere early today. They did not pick us up due to interference from the ionic clouds on the planet. It could not have carried more than 2 people aboard it," Thomas said.
"Well, the Guild did claim this Nomen first,"
Reichert replied. "Right, but they missed the deadline to send representatives to the surface, so they lost claim of it. Then the Coalition claimed it. So why exactly are we invading?" Thomas asked.
"Command says RV-100342-324 is worth it."
Worth a war? This was a question Thomas thought twice about asking in front of his men. He did not want to give off the impression that the 3 battle group commanders were not in agreement in front of his troops. But if he had the question, the men and women aboard his ship probably did too.
"That is enough, Commander Winchester."
Beeping began on all 3 bridges, indicating a fleet-wide message.
"That will be the Admiral. Stand by for orders. Reichert out. Battle Group 2 standing by. Olds out."
Battle Group 3 standing by. Winchester out. Thomas and his crew watched as the massive Leviathan-class megacruiser NRS Osiris exited her warp jump in the middle of the 3 battle groups, officially making it the Second Fleet. Admiral Tavington appeared on screen. He was a tall, tough-looking, elderly man. His hair was mostly gray with a few dashes of black, indicating its color in his younger years. The right side of his face was scarred, and he had a cyber-optic implant where his right eye used to be.
"All battle groups, this is Admiral Tavington, commanding officer of this Second Fleet. The invasion of RV-100342-324 is a go. Tell your troops to destroy anything on the surface that looks man-made. I expect reports every 30 minutes."
The screen went blank. Thomas Winchester felt a rush of adrenaline. He grabbed the ship-wide intercom and barked, "Phase 3 is a go. Barn burn procedures are in effect. I say again, Phase 3 is a go. Barn burn procedures are in effect." He watched as a few hundred ships, landing craft, fighters, and bombers scattered out in tight formations from the fleet down to the planet. He couldn't help but wonder why 3 battle groups were required for 1 colony of Coalition personnel and a potential of 1 or 2 mercenaries hired by the Guild. But overkill was generally the Nairotzi way, and if a numbered admiral was getting involved with the Nomen, then it had to be of high importance. "Sir, our troops have made landfall. We are about to lose contact, though, due to the ionic clouds. Have 1 fighter squadron remain just above the atmosphere to act as a relay for us." "Yes, sir."
"Sir, initial reports are coming in. Our fighters have engaged numerous enemy craft."
One of the intelligence officers interjected. "Numerous? How many? Are they Coalition?"
"I'm not sure, sir. We lost contact with the fighter squadron that engaged them. Battle Group 1 is reporting that they've lost 4 fighter squadrons and 2 bomber squadrons already."
How can this be?" Thomas mumbled to himself. He felt cold inside, hearing the loss of his men and women as though they were mere chess pieces. But now was no time for feelings.
"Sir, enemies on scope. Several unidentified ships just dropped out of warp right behind us."
"Bring the battle group around," Thomas barked. He pushed a button on his chair to calm the Admiral, but Tavington was already on screen and issuing orders to the fleet.
First and second group move to positions 180 by 2234 by 6901. Third group, form up around the NRS Osiris.
Tavington commanded. All forward full, Thomas called. As the NRS Red Drake came about, Thomas beheld a foreign fleet, 3 times the size of the one he was in. Thomas Winchester knew every human and Legnor ship that ever floated around this galactic cluster, but these ships were of designs he had never seen before. They were very curvy and had a gold color to them. He would study their new designs at length after battle. The unidentified fleet immediately opened fire on the second fleet. His ship quaked from the initial impact. All batteries, open fire on the nearest hostile vessels. Scramble all remaining fighters and bombers. Tell the group to focus their fire together and get me a damage report, Thomas commanded. The ship shook as the missile silos and gun batteries on the frigate returned fire. It was quite a scene to witness, as the combined firepower of these two fleets was unleashed upon one another. Some smaller ships exploded like fireworks. Missiles and armor-piercing slugs flew about like shooting stars. Patch the strategic footage to command. They need to see these ships. Our long-range transmissions are being jammed, sir. Logos, we're being jammed on every frequency, the comm officer cried. All we've got are tight-beam short-range comms. Sir, shields are holding at 79%. The Stark Knight and Son of Eden are reporting full shield loss. There was an explosion off the bow as a laser lance virtually sliced a gunboat in half, and the view screen darkened a few shades to prevent the crew on the bridge from going blind. We just lost Caspian. I'm reading only a few escape pods made it out, the radar officer reported. Who are they? Thomas asked. Use the hammerheads. The NRS Red Drake and one of the corvettes, the Sky Bison, fired on an enemy frigate. It exploded as one salvo of hammerhead missiles wiped out its shields with a splash of shimmering electricity, and the next salvo punctured its hull, causing internal explosions. The enemy ship broke into pieces. Thomas half expected to hear cheering, but there was none. Everyone knew they were losing. At least everybody could now see that this mysterious enemy fleet wasn't indestructible. Ensign, spread the word to the rest of the fleet about the hammerheads. The battle was practically chaos. From what Thomas saw, the first and second battle groups were chewed to pieces from walls of enemy fire before they could even begin a flanking maneuver. For every enemy ship they took down, the Nairodzi fleet lost at least 5. The ship shook violently as it took another direct hit. Thomas watched as an enemy projectile exploded off the bow, and their shields rippled to dissipate the blast. Shields down to 21%, sir. Pull power from the rear deflectors and put it towards forward deflectors. Call back our invasion teams. We're getting out of here. Thomas Winchester was not afraid, just extremely focused. Watching the battle unfold before him, ships exploded all around him. Explosions in space were curious, sort of like what an explosion looks like underwater, but without the bubbles. He couldn't even bear to think about the death toll yet. Sir, there's no invasion team left to recall.
Lieutenant Commander Winchester,
Admiral Tavington interrupted.
Have your group press forward to create a corridor for the NRS Osiris while we jump. Once we've cleared, follow us back to Nairodzi space.
Is he insane? Logos, the Osiris is probably the only reason we have a fighting chance. If he jumps, there won't be anything left of my battle group. But the Admiral already knows that. What a way to go.
Understood, sir. You heard the man. Push forward. Let's show these dogs what we're made of. The third battle group pressed forward, firing every weapon it had. The Stark Knight exploded. The NRS Osiris jumped to warp. A cry came over the Battle Group 3 frequency from the commander of the Son of Eden when a doomed enemy cruiser on a suicide run collided with her ship. They both broke in half and exploded. Give the order for all non-essential crew to abandon ship, Winchester said solemnly. The sky bison erupted into a plume of fire before being extinguished by the vacuum of space. The dreaded laser lance sliced the remainder of Battle Group 3 to pieces, leaving only the NRS Red Drake. Escape pods began to jettison from the frigate.
Battle Group 1, Battle Group 2, do you read? I have lost all ships and will be jumping to warp shortly. Battle Group 1, Battle Group 2, do you read?
Sir, we're all that's left.
The ship was hit again and damage klaxons began to sound, indicating loss of power and atmosphere.
Sir, shields are down. We've lost primary and secondary power, and hull integrity is at 70%.
Can we jump? Thomas yelled.
Negative, sir.
All crew, abandon ship.
At least that thick hull bought us this much time.
The crew sprung from their seats and scrambled for their designated escape pods. All but Lieutenant Commander Thomas Winchester, who slowly stood from his command seat and walked up to the pilot's chair. He looked at the forward view screen and witnessed the carnage of the battle. The entirety of Second Fleet, aside from the NRS Osiris, was in pieces, scattered about in orbit over the wretched planet Scorpion.
Sir, are you coming?
A young intelligence officer with blonde hair containing a rogue black streak, Ensign Medell, was the only other person on the bridge. Go on. I'm going to try to buy the pod some time, Thomas said clearly. She hesitated. That's an order, Ensign. She ran off. Another series of impacts riddled the hull of his frigate. Thomas hadn't piloted anything since he himself was an ensign. He pointed the vessel straight at the planet and gave her all the thrust she had left in her. The NRS Red Drake rocketed towards Scorpion and into the ionic atmosphere. He hoped the enemy fleet would give chase. The incoming fire stopped. Not even a single enemy fighter wanted to chase Thomas and his doomed frigate through the ionic atmosphere. Thomas let out a sigh. The ship broke the cloud layer, and Thomas pointed his frigate at a large, gray desert. The scene before him would have almost been serene if not for all the alarm klaxons going off. He saw the smoking remains of what was likely the Coalition colony just north of his intended landing zone. He put the ship into a nose-up attitude to try to bleed off some airspeed just as he was taught at the academy. Then he flipped on whatever air brakes hadn't been shot off and went into full reverse thrust. He was still traveling entirely too fast. And he knew it.
I never did like this ship.
The NRS Red Drake impacted the planet Scorpion.